Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the second event of the evening, and we're a little bit rushed, but we're very, very happy to have you here. Welcome to the Global Briefing Series this evening. My name is Randy Kluver. I'm the Dean of the School of Global Studies and Partnerships at Oklahoma State University, and it is an immense privilege to bring tonight's program to you. The purpose of the Global Briefing Series is to bring awareness of global issues to the OSU community and to the Stillwater community to really help our communities understand the complex global realities around us, as well as to bring prominent speakers who can help us to better understand these. I do have two housekeeping things to say, which I always forget to say, so I've been reminded. Number one, if you are a student in the room, if you will scan one of the QR codes on your phone, that we will then send notification to your faculty members that they're here. We know that's not why you're here. You're here to learn, but hey, it helps to get course credit as well. I also want to thank the guests from FATAGS, I don't know how to say it, Friday Afternoon Tea and Glee Society, which is just one of the most wonderful parts about Oklahoma State University. Doy la bienvenida a los participantes de nuestras instituciones asociadas en México, UPAEP y WIC, quienes están viendo el evento de esta noche en línea. So thank you to our friends, 260 or so from our partner institutions in Mexico. We're very, very glad you're able to join us this evening. Tonight we have a special presentation. It's not our normal lecture, but instead we have a presentation by our good friend Chic Dambach. Chic is a graduate of 1968, I think.
67.
From OSU. His wide-ranging career includes President and CEO of the National Peace Corps Association, President and CEO of the Alliance for Peacebuilding, CEO of Operation Respect, and Chief of Staff for Congressman John Garamendi. He's held executive positions in education, the arts, sports, and health, and he was an expert advisor to the Director of the Peace Corps. He was nominated by members of Congress for the Nobel Peace Prize, and he was awarded the Medal of Knight of the National Order of Mali, as well as the Lifetime Achievement Award for Advancing World Peace from the Rotary Club of World Peace. Chic has been involved in a dizzying array of activities, my word, all with a single goal: to increase global peace. The most important thing, of course, is you are the newest recipient of the Henry G. Bennett Distinguished Fellows Program. So thank you very, very much, Chic, for being here.
Thank you.
Chic is going to be interviewed tonight by Hank Hankla, a 1968 graduate of OSU. So I guess he beat you by a year, Hank. So Hank's first jobs were with U.S. senators from Oklahoma during a period of intense social unrest, including the Vietnam War and civil rights. After completing law school at Georgetown, he worked in the area of environmental law and became one of the 5 original Clean Air Act enforcement attorneys in the National EPA headquarters. He spent many years practicing law in Washington, and then after retiring from law, he decided to actually have impact with his career, so he went into public teaching. So thank you for that, Hank. He is also one of the Dambach Peacebuilders Donors Council. Please join me in welcoming Chic and Hank. The interview portion of our time will last about 30 minutes. After that, we'll have time for question and answer. So, Hank and Chic, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're pleased to be here, and we're pleased to be speaking also to the 300 or so who are listening in Mexico.
Muchas gracias a los de México, mis amigos de México.
Anytime we're trying to understand how someone has an impact on the world, you have to really start with some context. Chic is from small town Oklahoma, and the time he was at Oklahoma State, he wouldn't have dreamed that he would have the kind of impact that he has. But your life experiences here at OSU really shaped what would come after. Tell us about what the real experiences were that directed you later.
Well, I certainly didn't come here expecting any of this to happen. I came on a football scholarship. Tim Havern's here. I think he's the only one from our football team who is here today. And Tim, I really appreciate you being here. But I wasn't a very good football player. Tim would vouch for that. But I got hurt and couldn't play anymore, so I had a whole lot of time on my hands. So I joined the debate team. How many people go from the football team to the debate team? But I did. And there started reading and had the debate coach, a man named Dale Stockton, just forced me to start thinking about things. And it has changed my whole global perspective, and a couple of other faculty members as well. In fact, one that is recognized here at the School of Global Studies is Judd Milburn, who was an English professor. He had a profound effect on me and just got me thinking about values and what happens. And something happened with that football program that just rocked my soul. One of this was this early 60s, mid 60s, and racism was pretty rampant. And one of the players on the team, an African-American member of the team, Earl Jones, was really brutalized by the coaching staff. They wanted to force him to quit, and he was brutalized. It was awful, absolutely awful. And he was my friend, and I did nothing to help him, nothing to help him. And that bothered my conscience. I went back to the dorm room and just thought, how could I let that happen to my friend Earl? But I did. And I vowed never again to let things like that go unresponded. And so that started a lifelong process of caring about what happens to people in the world and trying to find whatever way I could. Had the opportunity to join the Peace Corps, an opportunity to do things in parts of the world that are in many ways struggling. And I learned a great deal from them. They taught me, and I was able to help them deal with some of the issues they were dealing with. But that's what happened here at Oklahoma State. A few faculty members, a few incidences that just forced me to start thinking about human values and what can be done to improve the human condition.
I think yours is a good example for any of the students who are here tonight, that you can't know what's going to be ahead of you, but learn from the experiences and take advantage of them while you're here. Follow Chic's example of learning from it, painful as it may be. You also, as you got out into the career, the Peace Corps, and what you learned in Columbia, and the organizing of the states, you reorganized the National Peace Corps Volunteers Association into something that's really productive. What did you learn from that?
Well, that you can't do it alone, and it's not. I think those two things. It's not about you, and you can't do it alone. None of this is about me. I know I'm getting all kinds of accolades today. I don't deserve a bit of it. I've worked with a lot of really wonderful people, and together we've done some pretty neat stuff, and I'm proud of that. But I couldn't do it alone. And again, it's not about me. It's what we can do to make things better for the people we share this planet with. And if we go into it with that set of values, we can indeed make a difference. Some make a small difference. Some seem to be able to make a larger difference. But we can all. In fact, I was motivated by President Kennedy. Those of us who grew up at that time, many of us were, and he said, "One person can make a difference, and everyone should try." And I kind of took that to heart and said, well, maybe I can make a difference. If I can, then when I leave this planet, I can leave this planet proudly and say, my time here was worthwhile. And so having that set of values just makes all the difference.
Let me ask a question from another angle. You're being lauded today for all of your successes, and they have been many. But I've never known anyone who really achieved heights that didn't have to learn how to overcome the failures or the times that they didn't achieve what they wanted. There's a famous education study by Dr. Carol Dweck out of Stanford, where she took two groups of students, fifth graders, and in one group, teachers were to tell them that they were all smart when they scored well. The other group never used the word smart, just praised them for how hard they work and how well they can begin to understand how they made a mistake. At the end of the year, the kids that were told they were smart weren't nearly scoring as high as the others. And they decided after analysis that it was because if a kid thought he was told he was smart, eventually he made a bad grade, he thought maybe I'm not smart. And he didn't continue to try. Where the kids that learned how to profit from their mistakes, continued, and the life track was much better. I wouldn't ask you to say anything about embarrassing situations, but you have had a wide variety of experiences in life, some of them not as successful as you wanted. What did you learn from those times when you didn't succeed?
There are certainly a whole bunch of experiences that did not work out the way I thought they would. I got fired from a job once, and it was devastating, but learned that you better pay attention to your job and to your work and focus on it and make sure you do it well. They were right to fire me. I messed up. But the other thing, though, is, well, I think two things. One is, even if you fail, if you're doing something that is of value and worth doing, you can take satisfaction in it. I once trained to be an Olympian in kayak racing, and I trained twice a day, every day for many, many years, and I didn't make the Olympic team. But I have zero regrets. So that could be considered a failure. A lot of people would see that and say, you put in all that time and effort and you failed to make the Olympic team. I don't regret a minute of it, because every minute of that training, I enjoyed what I was doing, I believed in what I was doing, and I was doing it with people that I cared about. In fact, that's how I met my dear wife, Kay, who is here, and none of this would be possible if it wasn't for Kay and all that she has done to support me. But I was doing it with people I cared about, doing something that I believed in, that I thought was important. And did I fail? Yes, I failed. But some of the people I was doing with went on to succeed. In fact, one of them, Greg Barton, godfather of our youngest son, a two-time Olympic champion, and a very close friend. So, I made friends along the way. I didn't succeed in making the team, but made friends along the way and felt good about it, and just kept at it as long as I could. And so, again, if it's something you can believe in and care about, even if you fail, it's okay. You just pick up and carry on.
In your work, the term peace building has been central, often attributed to you, at least its popularity and use is attributed to you. Tell us a little bit about why peace building is important as separate from peacekeeping or peacemaking, and maybe how that works with the sustainable goals issue.
Well, that's an excellent question. The term peace building was originally coined in 1974 by a Norwegian sociologist, but it's had several meanings over the years and never really got picked up and used widely. But when I became president of the Alliance for International Conflict Prevention and Resolution, I asked the board that hired me, what's the most important thing you want me to accomplish in the first year? And they said, build an identity for what we do. I said, well, let's begin with the name of the organization. A long, convoluted name like that is going to get you nowhere. So I worked with a remarkable young lady who was on the board named Lisa Shirk. And I give far more credit to Lisa than to myself for all of this. So she and I went to work on it and thought about several titles that we could use, and we came up with Peacebuilding, which was already in existence, in fact being used much more in much of the rest of the world than in the United States. But we decided that should be the name, and we took it to the board, and it took a little while for them to agree. They finally agreed to change the name to the Alliance for Peacebuilding. A lot easier to say, it fits on one short line, and it had a wide range of definitions, and most of the definition for it was for what you do in post-conflict reconstruction. We said, but it's better to build peace before the war breaks out than after the war breaks out. So we need to make sure that people use that term not just for post-conflict, which the UN was doing. The UN had a peace-building commission, but it was totally for post-conflict reconciliation. We said, no, let's be building peace before the violence breaks out. And so we then started getting the word out to our friends and colleagues throughout the country, throughout the world, in academics, in the NGO world and so on, and they bought it. They bought our case that should be the term that is used, and now it is no longer a misspelling in Microsoft Word when you put in peace building. It's there. Wikipedia put a definition in, and I keep this on my PowerPoint. The first definition they put in there was my definition. And I was so proud that Wikipedia had Peacebuilding, had a definition, and it had my name as the source of it. And I keep it so that my kids can look at that and say, if Dad's name was in Wikipedia, he's okay. He's done all right. But after I left the organization, they moved on and modified the definition a little bit. My name's no longer there, so don't go to Wikipedia looking for my name. But I was pretty proud that it was there for a little while. And we did. I deserve no credit for it at all. But Lisa deserves far more than I do, and the people that adopted it and started applying it. But the concept is that you build the systems, the structures, and the attitudes that enable societies to live in peace. And the fact of the matter is that most of the world lives peacefully. We get the impression from the news that the world is blowing up and everybody's killing everybody else. Well, that's just not true. Most of the world lives in peace. And the question is, how then do they do that? And a beautiful, brilliant analysis that has taken place by a good friend of mine named Steve Killalay from Sydney, Australia. Not every good thing comes from the United States, I hate to tell you, but some other people in other parts of the world do some pretty smart things as well. Steve Killalay, a technology genius entrepreneur, started getting involved in this stuff, created something called the Global Peace Index to rank the countries of the world based on their peacefulness and to identify the most peaceful countries and then to study them, say, what are they doing right? What are the peaceful countries doing right that others could then emulate to become more peaceful? The metaphor that Steve and I like to use for this is if you wanted to become an Olympic champion marathon runner, would you study the people that never made the team or would you study the guy that won the gold medal? Study the one that won the gold medal. So if you want to become a peaceful country, do you study the countries that are still always at war, or why not take a look at the countries that are at peace? And what are they doing right? What behaviors should we emulate? And that has just transformed an awful lot of the international relations people and experts all over the world start kind of rethinking this. Well, maybe we ought to take a fresh look at how we go about doing that. So that's where peace building comes in, is to look at the systems and structures and the attitudes that enable societies to live peacefully, look at the ones that are doing right and see how others can emulate it and result in a more peaceful world.
And I take it that one of the things you think the countries are doing right, that are doing it right, are ones that are living up to the Sustainable Development Goals. And the UN's, I think it's number 16 especially, and that the young people that you're working with, you emphasize that in their training and in their emphasis for their work as you mentor them.
Well, I love the UN Sustainable Development Goals because it looks at the interaction of these 17 different factors that the UN identified. By the way, the UN went through an exhaustive process to develop the sustainable goals, held town meetings literally throughout the world, asking citizens to come together and saying, what are the most important things for the world to do to make the world a better place to live? And through an exhaustive process, boiled it down to these 17 goals. Now, frankly, it's still too many. It becomes a little difficult to pay attention to that many goals, but that's what they ended up with. One of them was, goal 16, was the peace and justice and institutions goals. And it was the hardest one to get in there, and I happened to be deeply involved in the lobbying and the advocacy for them to put it in there. It was the hardest one to get in there because they wanted all the goals to be measurable. And I said, well, how do you measure peace? Well, we went right straight to Steve Killalay, my friend from Australia, and the Global Peace Index said, we know how to measure it, and we're doing it, and we're ranking the countries of the world based on their peacefulness. So it can be done, and of course there are others with other factors that went into it as well. But Steve and his work was extremely important in enabling the UN to say, yeah, we need to include Goal 16. But a big part of that is if you look at all of the goals of the Sustainable Development Goals with regard to health and poverty and to environmental quality and all of these factors, they all interact with each other. And that's what's so important to understand, is that these are not independent silos. They're interdependent factors that play together to make a more peaceful and a better world, or if they don't work together, then you end up not having a more peaceful world.
You have a number of people that are some well-known, some should be well-known, with whom you have worked, who have been trying to implement these around the world. We'd hoped to have Victor Oken here, and he had trouble getting here. It would have been wonderful to have him speak, and I understand they have him scheduled for the spring to be here, and you will all enjoy hearing him then. But you've talked about several of the others. You talked about Lisa, Mikhail Nobel, and several of the others. Why don't you give us examples, if you can, of what they have done in their countries to help move toward this goal?
Well, and I want to focus on the young people.
Yes.
Which just, people ask me how I feel about the future of the world. I say I'm very confident about the future of the world, because the greatest privilege I have at my age is I get to meet and work with a whole lot of very, very young people who are doing extraordinary work throughout the world. And they call me a friend. I certainly call them a friend. And I just adore these people. And because of them, I'm confident that the world is going to continue to improve. And by the way, the world has been improving decade after decade after decade after decade from the beginning of time. There are a couple of books you ought to read. Humankind is probably the best one of the bunch, but there are a whole bunch of them out there that document the progress that humanity has made over the years. And it's the new generations that come along and say, my parents screwed up, but I'm going to make things better. And I like to say when I lecture on college campuses, I'm pretty proud of what my generation did, but we left a few problems for you students to solve. We could have solved all of them, but you would have been bored, so we left you a few problems that you get to solve as well. But some of these young people, and by the way, it is overwhelmingly women that are emerging as leaders and problem solvers, just making all the difference in the world. I left the Alliance for Peacebuilding 10 years ago, and they're on their third person succeeding me, and every one of them has been a woman, and every one of them has done a dramatically better job than I did of leading that organization. But Hank mentioned Victor Ochen, who we had hoped would be here today. Couldn't get his visa in time, but he will be here someday. Victor is the youngest African ever to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And sometimes we talk about only an American can a person rise up from poverty and be successful. Victor was born in a displaced persons camp, lived on one meal a day for the first 10 years of his life, was never able to get the kind of quality education that we just expect. Never, ever got it. And yet, at age 13, when his family and his village was attacked by the Lord's Resistance Army, lost his brother, he was tempted to take up arms and fight back. And he said, if I do that, that just perpetuates the violence. We kill them, they'll kill us. We kill them, they kill us. And that just carries on. He said, I'll never touch a weapon. I'll never touch a weapon as long as I live. And he built a peace camp in the displaced persons camp, a peace club of people who said, we will do everything we can to improve our lives, but we will never, ever use weapons to fight back or to advance what we believe in. He became in his early 30s, the UN Global Ambassador for Peace and Justice. Kid growing up like that. Become recognized whenever the UN Secretary General goes to Africa, they want to meet with Victor. He is a regular speaker at at Davos at the World Economic Forum. People all over the world listen to Victor Ochen, this young man from northern Uganda, born with nothing, but was attacked and took the right path and is literally leading the development of a new generation of young people in Africa, determined to make that continent, instead of being the least peaceful continent on the planet, they want it to become the most peaceful continent on the planet. Victor, and he has, of course, a whole network of people he works with to help make that happen. So, I see things like that. I have a friend, many of us, particularly coming out of 9/11, pretty upset with the Muslims of the world. We were downright angry with all of the Muslims in the world, and they're horrible people. All of them are horrible people. Well, there happen to be about 1.5 billion of them, and if they were all horrible people, I think the world would be in dire straits. They're not horrible people. In fact, with the exception of very, very few, they're wonderful people. And among my favorites is a young lady that I met at LaGuardia Airport. I was waiting in line for a bus, and this young lady came up behind me and said, "Is this the bus to Penn Station?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well," and I said, "Well, if we share a cab, it won't be all that expensive, and we'll get there a lot faster." She said, "Let's do it." And her parents got mad at her for getting into a cab with this old, dirty old man. But, but we shared a cab to Penn Station. On the way in, we started talking, and I found out that she was absolutely brilliant. She was going to Hunter College. She graduated first in her class at Hunter College. She is absolutely brilliant. She now writes regularly for the New York Times, for the Atlantic, and for many other publications all over the world. And she is an advocate for women's rights within Islam and throughout the world, and for dealing with the multiple issues and conflicts, mostly in the Muslim world. She is a major factor in that. She's just turned 30 recently. And my dear, dear friend, she lives near us. We get to see, her name is Riada Asimovic Akiol. She married Mustafa Akiol, who is also a major figure in the Muslim world. And so I look at these young people who are doing things like this and say, yeah, the world's going to be okay. We've got these young people coming along who are doing the right thing. So I'm confident.
We want to take questions, but I want to give Chic a chance to close out. What challenge do you want to issue to these young people and the people listening tonight?
Well, first of all, care about what is happening around you. Pay attention to what's happening around you. The world isn't built around any one of us. It's built of all of us. And recognize the value of human beings working together to solve the problems that affect all of us. If we just think of the world in that way. The term service has come up a couple of times today. And I participated in a conference at the Kennedy Library several years ago about the challenge that President Kennedy gave us to ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And the question was, how is our society doing with regard to that? And I think we've lost some of that spirit. I don't see anyone running for office anymore challenging us to do better. It's all about if I will promise to give you more, you will give me your vote. That's kind of the ethos in the country right now. Time out. Wait a second. Aren't we all in this together? And don't we all need to serve one another? Serve the country, serve our communities, serve our neighborhoods, serve one another. Don't we need to be doing that in order to make life better for everyone on this planet? So I would urge you to keep in mind the importance of service to humanity. And it may not be the best way to make a lot of money, but I have some good friends who do a lot of service and make a lot of money. But you make something far more than money. You make a difference. And you can go to bed at night sleeping and feeling pretty darn good about having done something good for your community and for the world. So I would just encourage young people to reorient from this give me mindset that seems to have permeated our culture. And I think it's doing serious damage to our culture. I would love to see us get back to the notion that service is central.
Thank you, Chic. You continue to be an inspiration for all of us.
Thank you.
We'll take some questions.
We have a time for questions and answers. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Let me bring the mic to you. And then before you start speaking, please introduce yourself and then speak into the mic so we can capture it on video. Where's our first question? Oh.
Hi, I'm Lou Watkins. Chic, welcome. If you were an advisor to President Putin, what advice would you be giving him right now?
Resign.
Good question. If I were an advisor to President Putin, I would say cease and desist. Not that he would pay any attention to me saying that, but I would say, please think about what you're doing in the context of where history is. I think he's doing this because he wants to be a conquering hero like the previous heroic figures. And when we look at history, we put on pedestals people who conquered and built empires. But we're not doing that anymore. Coming out of World War II and some of the other conflicts after that, we came out of that saying, wait a second, empire building is no longer tolerable. It is not even tolerable. And the United Kingdom, for example, dismantled itself. Now, they were pressured to do it. A lot of the colonies fought and demanded that they do it, but they finally recognized that, this just doesn't work anymore. And the other, virtually all of the colonies in the world fought back and are no longer colonies. And so that period of history is long, long gone. He's trying to recapture that for Russia, thinks he'll go down in history books as a conquering hero, and I'm sorry, he will not. There is no way he's going to change that flow of history. That flow of history has already been determined, and there is no longer a conquering hero anywhere in the world. You don't become a hero by conquering, you become a hero by building. You become a hero by building a better world. And that's something that Putin seems to have missed that memo. But that's what I would try to do, is get that memo in front of him.
Okay.
Chick, it's great having you here, and Hank, and
All the rest of the 60s, it influenced my wife.
is that your wife or your life?
Chick, yeah. Chick, one of the things that I add to is I speak to a lot of young people. And I've been honored today after luncheon. Several of them came up and said, I'd had an impact on their life. But one of the things I say to a lot of young people is the biggest failure when they're looking at problems, the biggest failure is to do nothing at all. That's the biggest failure, because we're losing a lot of our valuable time in life. So,
Thank you, Wes, and you're one of the people that influenced me early on. I hope everybody knows this is Wes Watkins, and this is the Wes Watkins building that we are in. Thank you so much, Wes. Yeah, just get out there and do something. Get out there and do something. Don't sit on your butt and watch TV. I'm sorry that life is full of opportunities at all levels to do things that make a difference, make things better, and you're going to have fun doing it. I've had a delightful life. I've been involved with war and conflict, but I've had a delightful life because of the people I've been able to work with and enjoy life with, and because we felt like we were doing something for good, and so we just flat out able to enjoy it. So get out there and do something, right?
right, and I don't play golf. I say, chasing that little white ball and all. My son called me one time and said, "Son, let's go play golf." It's right next. I said, "Son, I'm not a golfer, but I'll go out and maybe crack at it with you." And I realized it's my son calling me. I should take time to go.
He beat me though.
Yeah, and your son sitting right in front of you.
My name is Ben Shemola. Thank you for Dr. Fullerton for inviting me. I'm a graduate of the program, and I currently work with the Job Corps under the Department of Labor. From your story, you developed this vision about serving because of what happened to your friend. That was because you had the human interaction. During your days, human interaction was more prevalent than what we have right now. In the current generation where you have digital type of interaction, where sociology right now is not really bounded by physicality, but rather by digital technology, what would be your advice for the current generation, and how can they strategically still have that human empathy that grows with physical interaction for peace building?
Excellent question. This technology and the ability to communicate worldwide instantaneously.
Cuts both ways.
Instantaneously is just phenomenal, but I think we're all recognizing that has been a factor in dividing society. Different groups have identified themselves, and then they only listen to people who view the world the same way, and we don't get together face to face the way we used to. part of my advice is to turn off your computer and go have a beer or at least something with another live human being and groups of human beings. Just make it a point to make sure that happens. Now it takes some effort to make it happen. It doesn't used to be automatic. It's the only way you could communicate with anybody is if you got together with them. But I think it's really important for us to come together, and not just with people who look like us and think like us and believe like us, to come together with people with different points of view and exchange ideas and have that kind of interaction that enables us to broaden our own understanding of the dynamics of the human existence. And based on that, then we can do far more. Sue Jacobs is here, who's with a program on campus called Difficult Dialogues. And what it's all about is identifying subjects or topics that are difficult, where people might yell at each other. And she'll bring them together, and one of the ground rules is you can't yell at each other. You have to talk. You engage in a dialogue to better understand one another and try to reach an understanding and try to reach the best conclusions and solutions to whatever the issues are or problems. But I think coming together, I'm glad to see all of you here in this room today. We could have done, this could have been a Zoom meeting. Could have been. But it's a whole lot better that we're in this room together, and all of you will chat with one another. You were chatting with each other in the hall before we came in. You'll chat with each other as you leave, and that is so important to our ability as human beings to connect as human beings. So I love the technology. I love the fact that we can communicate with each other. One of my best friends in the world is from Timbuktu. Timbuktu. And we do Skype calls between me in Washington, D.C. and Mahaman in Timbuktu. And you know how much it costs us? Not one penny. Wow. Wow. Think about that. When I was going to school here, I didn't call my parents very often because it cost too much. Because I was in Ohio and I was here. Cost too much to make a phone call to Ohio. And now I can talk to my friend Mahaman in Timbuktu, and it doesn't cost a penny. That is phenomenal. And that enables us to bring the whole world community together. We can communicate with people all over the world at virtually no cost.
Allows us to have 300 listeners in Mexico.
In Mexico,
tonight.
Absolutely. So I'm so grateful for the technology, but let's not let it rule our lives and keep us from communicating with each other as human beings face to face.
Hi, my name's Campbell Clark. I'm actually one of the students here in the School of Global Studies.
Very good.
So
Good.
very excited and very honored to be part of the program, and very honored and thankful for all the contributions y'all have had here today. So clearly in your experiences, you've had a lot of resolution of conflicts, and clearly that takes a high level of understanding of both sides of the issue. So my question to you is how can we best understand people's perspective and their issues? How can we best understand people as a whole?
You might reflect a little on what you did in Africa and how you came to understand that.
It's an excellent question, and it's something we don't do very well, and I think that's a skill we're losing instead of gaining, and I hope we can turn that around and start to gain it. I'll come right back here to Oklahoma State University, and my mentor, Dale Stockton, who taught Introduction to Public Speaking. And when I took that course, I thought I was going to learn how to stand up in front of an audience and get over stage fright and express myself and convince everybody that I was right. Dale taught us to listen. He wasn't teaching us how to speak. He was teaching us how to listen. He said, if you can't listen, you'll never be a good speaker. Whoa, wait a second. And so, and we became best of friends. And he taught me the importance of listening to understand, not to reply and win the argument, but to understand the other side of the argument. That lesson had a profound impact on me. Another thing that happened right here at Oklahoma State, I was chairman of the forum committee that brought speakers to campus. One of the speakers we brought, and by the way, we fought bitterly with the administration over the people we wanted to bring, and one type of speaker we were absolutely prohibited from bringing was a communist. Now, I'm not a communist. I have no appreciation for communism whatsoever. But I thought we need to better understand the people of the world that do embrace that. There's some reason that some people in the world want to embrace that. I want to understand why they do, and I want them to understand why I do. We brought Dr. Han Soo-yin, who was the author of a romance novel called A Many-Splendored Thing. And when Dr. Kam, the president of the university, knew that's who I was bringing, he was very pleased. A romance author. Finally, Chic gets it. I'm sorry, but I forgot to tell him she was a close friend of Mao Zedong. Somehow I neglected to mention that. And in our promotion of it, we neglected to mention it, but we said to everybody, don't miss this. Don't miss this. And she came, and the only reference to A Many-Splendored Thing was when I introduced her as the author of that. She didn't say one word about that best-selling book of hers. But she said something that just knocked me out. And it has been the key to my being able to have a meaningful effect on people at war with each other. And here's what she said. I know you're concerned about what Mao is doing in China. She says, but take a step back. Look at Vietnam. You have 400,000 soldiers fighting in Vietnam. Why are they there? Vietnam is a small, inconsequential country, but it's right on China's border. The consequential country in that part of the world is China. Why are you there? You've got another 50,000 soldiers in Thailand, another 50,000 in Cambodia. Why are they there? If not to prepare to conquer China. So that's why Mao is doing what he's doing in China. And I thought, whoa, I never thought about it that way. And it just completely transformed my whole attitude about all of this kind of thing. So now, when I meet with people from the two sides fighting in a war, I say, let's find a way for you to understand the other side and why they are doing what they're doing. And in this 2-year process, meeting regularly with the heads of state, I met with the Prime Minister of Ethiopia and the President of Eritrea regularly. And every time I would listen to them for 20 minutes, and they would give me the reason they were fighting and why they were right. And I could have cut them off. I had heard it over and over again. I already knew what they were going to say. I could give their speeches for them. But I respectfully listened to them every time so that they would see that I was listening and understanding. And I would indicate that I understood. But then I would say, but please understand, I'm also meeting with your adversary. And I'm listening to and understanding him as well. And I would encourage you to try to understand his point of view and why he is doing what he is doing. And if both of you can do that, you can reach a point then of a resolution where you no longer are killing people by the tens of thousands to determine whether this little town of Badme belongs in one country or the other. It's just nonsense to be killing people to determine where the border should be. That should be determined by using people's brains instead of using guns. And it took a while, but they finally got to the point where they agreed. And after the treaty was signed, we got a letter from the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Meles Zenawi, thanking us for creating what he called the spirit and the momentum. We didn't negotiate the details of the peace agreement, but we created what he called the spirit and the momentum that made the peace agreement possible. And that's what we were all about. And it's that lesson that I learned on this campus nearly 60 years ago.
But also as I recall your story, you not only created that momentum, you created something that a lot of people recognized as that momentum. You had a story about the street vendor in Washington, D.C.
Well, yeah, this is very moving for me. After the treaty was signed, we knew that there was a lot of news about what our group was doing in trying to bring about a peaceful resolution to that terrible war. The treaty was signed, we came back, but most of the street vendors in Washington are from the Horn of Africa, either Ethiopia or Eritrea. And I went to the corner of 18th and L, just a block from my office, and got a hot dog from a lady that I'd had done that many times before, but this time I just asked where she was from. And she proudly said Eritrea. If you know people from Eritrea, they're very, very proud of Eritrea. And she proudly said, I'm from Eritrea. I said, I thought so. I said, I know your president. It says Afwerki. And she kind of looked at me like, who's ever heard of Eritrea, let alone know the president? She says, who are you? I said, well, I'm Chic Dambach. And her eyes got big. She said, I know you. I know who you are. You brought peace to my country. And I just broke down in tears. And she bounded out and gave me a big hug. And we remained best of friends. She comes to our house, and we just love each other. A street vendor in Washington, D.C. knew what we were doing and expressed that gratitude for what we had done.
We have time for one additional question.
Steve Hallgren.
Hello, Steve. Peace Corps guy many times over.
Well, Peace Corps Morocco, 72 to 74, and Tanzania, 2017 to 2019.
Really?
I'm curious if you have anything to say about truth and reconciliation programs.
Yeah.
There have recently been 3 that are notable, the one in South Africa, and then there was one in Rwanda, and one in Cambodia. And can those, what role might those play, or what has been learned from them about peace building?
Yeah.
Because they seem to be pretty prominent, and there's probably
Yeah.
more than the 3 I mentioned.
Yeah, the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, in fact, there are 2 things I want to comment about that are being used remarkably effectively. Not always, nothing always works. But Truth and Reconciliation is where in the aftermath of a violent conflict situation, or where there has been repression, instead of just putting people in prison and punishing them for their misdeeds, there is a process of people talking about what they did and why they did it and how they did it, and a healing process for the people who were wronged, and developing an understanding of one another. And it helps reduce the tension. It has had a major effect on reducing the conflicts that are ended and then start up again. For up until fairly recently, more than half of the conflicts that were resolved ended up within 5 years, they're fighting again. But where you have Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, that helps reduce the frequency of people going back to fighting again, because this is a way of working it out and reaching an understanding that yes, we did wrong, and we won't do it again, and let's find a way to live together peacefully. The other phenomenon, fairly recent phenomenon in dealing with violent conflict, is something called DDR, demilitarization, disarmament, and reconciliation. And DDR is taking place in many parts of the world very effectively. Colombia is probably the most dramatic example of it, the country where I served in the Peace Corps, where the FARC, this incredibly powerful rebel group for 50 years, creating 5 million displaced people in Colombia, just dreadful. But they started offering the guerrillas in the mountains an opportunity to come out and turn in their weapons and be given training and an opportunity to become a productive part of Colombian society. They provide 6 years for these people to go through this process, because most of these people joined the guerrilla movement in their early teens. They never got a regular education. All they knew how to do was fight. If you want to get these people to not spend their lives fighting, if that's all they know, you've got to provide them with an opportunity for a good life without killing other people. So that's what DDR does. Colombia has set the standard for it. And the good news is that a couple of years ago, the major part of that war in Colombia came to an end. And DDR, that policy, that philosophy played a major central role in bringing about an end to DDR. I got to go down there and spend a week meeting with the soldiers who were, is that mine? I apologize.
set an alarm?
I thought I had turned it off.
They're calling about your car insurance.
It's my good friend Spam. Thank you. I apologize. I thought I had turned it off. But I got to spend a week meeting with these people. I literally met people who had been, a week before, had been in the jungle fighting and killing people and had decided to come out. And I met people who were coming to the end of their 6 years of rehabilitation and reintegration into society. There were a couple of companies in Cali, the city of Cali, that were producing goods and services that were of value to the people in the country. These are people who had been guerrillas fighting in the war. And Colombia didn't put them in jail. They gave them a chance at a better life, and they took that chance at a better life, and it has resulted in dramatic improvement. There's still some fighting going on in Colombia. I can't say it's totally solved it, but it has proved to be remarkably effective. And concepts like that that are of relatively recent origin are part of the reason that I believe that we can continue to make progress.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Hank and Chic, for being here tonight.
Well done, Chick.
Thank you, Hank.
If I can, I'd like to make just a few final comments. Number one, I want to thank the Founders Council, the Dambach Peacebuilders Founders Council. You guys have made all of this possible. It's been a remarkable day. I hope you realize how much of an impact you will have, an enduring impact on the School of Global Studies. I also very much want to thank the OSU Foundation, particularly Courtney McNally, who has been instrumental in pulling all of this together. Thank you to the foundation. I want to thank those from the School of Global Studies and Partnerships, particularly Dr. Fullerton, Kara Eubanks, Kelly Norton. You guys have been phenomenal today. Thank you for all that you've done. I'm going to make one final request, which is today in the FATAG's reunion lunch, somebody, and I apologize, I forgot who made this comment, made a very important comment. They said, it's not a sprint, nor is it a marathon. It's a relay. Was that you, Hank? No? Ron, thank you for that, Ron. It was Anita Hill, right? Another OSU graduate. I've learned more about OSU's history. I'm going to ask, if we can, the FATAGs who are here, and apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but FATAGs just sounds wrong. I'm going to ask if you would meet with the students of the School of Global Studies down at the end of the hall where we have on the wall, How Will You Change the World? I'd like to have that baton passing ceremony, and I'd like to have a picture of that. So thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks again to Chic.
Thank you.